Okay, hey guys. So if you didn't watch my last tutorial, which the link will be in the description for, we're now going to get into what are functions and modules. So basically, a function. Well, I'll show you here. Um, for example, they have the absolute function, which is ABS, and what that does is it'll show you the number of basically, so it'll take away the negative sign on a number. So I put in -5 and it'll give me 5 because it just shows you how many times the number is away from 0. So for example, absolute 100 would be 100 because 100 is 100 integers away from 0. Or absolute 100.9.8, sorry, would give us 100.8. So that's a pretty simple one. There's also the print function. So for example, print hello world, and that'll return hello world. Now why are these useful? Well, functions are very useful in programming because you may need to perform a task on something a number of times, and you don't want to code out all of the little code that's needed to perform that task every time. So these are what we call default functions. For example, you could also use a function called the string function, and you can turn anything into a string. And a string is just a data type that has little quotations around it. So how do you import functions? Well, when you import a lot of functions, it's actually called a module. So how do you do this? Well, it's pretty straightforward. You do import, import, and then the name of the module. So for example, there's a module that Python comes with called math. Or no, I'm not going to use the math module. How about I use the system module? So import sys. So now it didn't seem to do anything, but it actually did. So now if I want to call a function like the print or the absolute function, but a function that is within the sys module, then I'm going to type sys dot, and then if I wait a second, I'm going to get a list of all of the functions that are associated with it. So for example, I can say get Windows version, and then I'm going to close it with 2 parentheses. Now, why did I do that? Well, if you see here, when you put the first parentheses, it's going to tell you what it wants inside of the parentheses or the brackets. And if there's nothing in there, then you're just going to close it. And for this function, for example, it's going to go to my Windows and get what Windows version I have. So I have 6 major release, and it's going to tell me all this information about what Windows version I have. There's also something called the math module. So I can import math, and I'm going to do the same thing, math dot. And if we wait a second, it's going to give us a list of all of these functions associated with the math module. So if I do math ceil, which stands for ceiling, then it's going to ask me to put, you see, these parentheses right here aren't blank. They have an X in it. And the X, if you remember, stands for a variable. So right now, when I'm typing 200 here, I'm setting X to the, I'm making X the value 200. So it's going to perform what it does on 200. Or for example, I could do math ceil 200.3, and it'll go to 201. Because what this function does is it rounds up. So in the next tutorial, Or in a couple of tutorials, I'm going to show you guys how to actually make these functions, but it's important to know what a function is and what it does. So to recap, a function basically takes whatever the value it wants, and it performs a certain task on it. So for example, the task that it performed on this was to round up. So it took 200.3 and rounded up to 201. And here it took hello world and it ran it and printed it on the next line. So it's important to just know that, and you can understand the rest of the tutorials. Thanks, guys.